You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Let's play a little game of Would You Rather, School Counselor Edition. Okay, would you rather spend your weekend planning a group or spend your afternoon sitting in irrelevant PD? Yikes. Or would you rather be the only counselor with no one to collaborate with, or to spend hours searching online for engaging activities? All of these options are pretty bad, right? But unfortunately, they're all too real. But what if I told you I had a solution for you? What if I told you I had access to hundreds of school counseling lessons, groups, and activities, counselor-specific trainings on the topics you need most, and a community of like-minded school counselors to support you? You would say, yes, please. Well, that is what Impact is all about. Impact is my monthly membership for school counselors, and it helps you with all of these things. You get access to hundreds of resources. That's unlimited free downloads. Log in and get what you need right away to every single resource that's in my store. We add new resources each and every month. We're adding a new middle school and elementary resource each month, and some of these are bonus Impact exclusives, meaning that you can get resources just for members. You can request resources that you need and easily search so you can find exactly what you're looking for. And let's talk about the trainings, counselor-specific trainings on the topics you need most. We do these each and every month as part of our Coffee with the Counselor series. Impact members get to join for absolutely free. You earn PD certificates and you get exclusive access to members-only things like the Ultimate Small Group Experience and our Summer Summit Conference. And the community. Y'all, this is possibly my favorite part of Impact. I so look forward to jumping on these calls, to getting to know counselors who are similar to me and also completely different. It's so fun to hear from your experiences and your challenges, and everyone brings a unique perspective to the table. We have an exclusive online community, and we even have a cool app where you can chat with other counselors in these community circles. We have our monthly calls, like I mentioned, twice a month, and we share wins, troubleshoot tough cases, and just talk about what it's like to be a counselor, because so often we're on our own island at our school sites. So if any of that sounds like it's for you, I would love to see you inside Impact. Go to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact to solve all of your counselor problems. And I have a special offer for my listeners. Use code POD at checkout to save 10% off your first month. Okay, let's go to today's episode. Hey there, you're listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. In today's episode, I interview my friend Leslie. Leslie has been on the podcast before, and she's also been a presenter at our Summer Summit Conference. You may be familiar with Leslie, but if not, I can't wait for you to meet her and to hear all about how she recommends we implement advisory as school counselors. I know Leslie in real life, so it's always fun to connect with her, and this episode goes a little personal, and we chat about some fun stuff as well. So I think you're going to love this episode with Leslie. So let's go ahead and dive in. Hi, Leslie. How are you?
Good. Hi, Rachel. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I had the pleasure of seeing you in person recently. So Leslie and I both sell on Teachers Pay Teachers, and that's how we met, through like a group of counselors and social workers and school psychs. And we were both just together in California at the conference.
It was so much fun. I absolutely love San Diego. The weather is amazing.
I know. I do too. I used to live there. So every time I'm there, I'm like, oh, why did I move? It's so great. Yeah, we actually, that's how we initially met in person, was at the first TPT conference, also in California, but a long time ago, like 2017.
Yes, I think so.
So crazy. So we've known you for a while, and I've had the pleasure of having you do Summer Summit and be on the podcast before. So the listeners may be familiar with you, but tell us a little bit about who you are and your background for those of you who don't know you yet.
So I'm Leslie Cuprill from Informed Decisions. I primarily focus on advisory and SEL content for educators and as resources for groups. I've worked in public, charter, and pilot schools, so I've had the full range of understanding administration in all of these places. So I try to help educators the best I can, like help connect and get their programs going the way that they need to.
I love it. I love it. And you are currently still doing this, right? Going into one school or an office, or what's that look like?
I mean, I'm working for a nonprofit right now that does go into schools, but I'm also like in a health center setting. So I have that as well. And I know some counselors that before have been like, we're not allowed to do that. But I've been asked to like create resources for like sexual health and like, what do you do? If students ask for condoms and stuff like that. So I know some of your listeners are like, our district doesn't allow that. But like in New York City, that we actually like were trained on like how to hand down condoms and like how to do different types of activities around sexual health. So that's kind of where that piece comes in that's a little different.
Right. No, I know. And that's why I love talking to you because, yeah, it's fascinating. And I think it's so important, the work you're doing. So that is about you formally, professionally. Let's get to a fun question. I was listening to some other podcasts I like, and I'm like, as a podcast listener, what do I love? And I love when they ask like some fun personal questions about the guest. So this is the first time we're trying this. We're going to have a little more personal twist on this. I'm testing it out on you because you're my friend. So the first thing I want to ask is just what's the best thing? You live in New York, so you probably have access to amazing food. What's the best thing that you've eaten lately?
Well, so lately was San Diego.
Oh,
So
true.
it
Yeah.
was in the Gaslamp district, right? I'm saying that right. And there was a really cute little Italian restaurant, and they had amazing like mushroom truffle risotto. It was amazing.
That sounds so good. That sounds so good. Yes, I am gonna go also. I'm gonna pick a San Diego one too. I mean, I have been back home in Costa Rica, but I've mostly just been cooking since I've been back home, so I haven't gone to like my favorite local restaurants. But yeah, when I was in San Diego, I had some really good pho at OB Noodle House, and it's one of my favorite restaurants. If you ever go there, the sizzling fish, the wings, and the pho #9, so good. It's my
Now
favorite.
people know exactly what to order if they go to that
Yeah,
restaurant when they're visiting San Diego.
I know. I go there all the time, and the server's always like, "Ooh, good choice." I'm like, I know. Okay, awesome, awesome. So now let's dive into the serious stuff. So talk to us a little bit about what you presented on. You presented at Summer Summit last month, and unfortunately, not everyone got to come. So maybe just tell us a little bit about what you presented on then, and just your area of expertise. Just fill us in. Tell us what you've been up to.
So I guess the majority like that what I did for Summer Summit was prepping and planning, which is like one of my passions. I know I have some really weird things that people are like, you love that, but I do.
I
I
do too.
love preparing, planning, color coding, and laminating are like my things. Like it just makes stuff so much easier. And I guess it's from all the years of, especially being a counselor, there's so many emergencies that get thrown at us. So even if we're doing groups or we're doing classes like for advisory, I've had to teach and you have to grade. So for those things, the more I prepped and planned, the easier it was to like fill in the gaps if an emergency came up. And I feel like that's so important, especially as a counselor, like to be able to have everything ready. And it doesn't mean it's going to go perfectly because not everything always does, but at least you're not scrambling last minute to like take care of everything.
I love that. Yes, preventative and proactive because you can't account for those crazy things that are definitely going to happen, those, unexpected occurrences, but you can control some things. So just like we tell our students to focus on like what they can control, in terms of like feeling anxious, I feel like it's the same way with us.
So, and then also upcoming for we're both doing, right? Are we both doing the upcoming, gosh, my brain is
Oh,
freezing. I'm
the
sorry.
summer counselor conference?
Yes, the summer counselor
Yes.
conference.
Yes. Yeah, we're both presenting at summer counselor conference.
Right. So on that too, I'm doing the thing when your principal or your admin comes to you last minute and they're like, hey, we want you to do a group or an advisory. Go. And you're like, where's my stuff? And they're like, no stuff. You just create it. So I know
Right.
I've experienced that a lot. I don't know if you have, but I definitely know.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, how do we do this and prepare and get this ready?
Yeah, can you give us a few strategies for that? Because I think that's something my listener struggles with as well, as being, asked to do a group or a lesson and they don't know where to start.
So I actually provide like a list of questions that you ask your admin to help you right off the bat so you can kind of shape what you're doing. A lot of the same like prepping and planning. planning what you can do. And I mean, I also think it comes to if you're a seasoned counselor or a newer counselor, the differences, right? So if you're a seasoned counselor, you kind of might already have some of the materials and you can kind of shape it as you go along. But with, um, I also suggest getting like the student input. So like using your first two, again, it depends if it's a group or an advisory, but like using your first few sessions to talk about ground rules, get their input on that and their feedback, setting up like your expectations from them and theirs from you. But you can also ask a survey of like what they want to learn. So I've done that as well, where I was like, all right, this is all about you guys. What do you want to learn while you're here? And giving them like a checklist that they could pick from. And even if you've already created it, it really helps connect to the students. So, and most of the things that you've talked about or that are going to be in your group or, in your class are things that they are going to choose anyway. So, it helps all with the connecting to the students and also helps with your planning. And I'd also say like, same as I said before, prep as much as you possibly can going into it so you kind of have it laid out or at least the topics and things that you want to address.
I love this idea of getting the student involvement. So when I do group rules, I do the same thing. Like in my head, I kind of know like, okay, these are what the rules are going to be, but I like, them to come up with them and I kind of guide them like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Like for the little kids, sometimes they'll get on like a tangent of like, don't kick, don't hit, don't poke. And I'm like, okay, yeah, be respectful, like trying to make it just like one
Right.
because they'll go crazy. But it's them being involved in their input, which they love. But I've never done it in terms of like topic. And I love that idea because I'm thinking like when I'm doing a group, it would be, referral based. But even if all the kids are there for the same referral, like self-control or something, we could still ask them, like, okay, we're here to like, work on our self-control. What's something you guys want to learn? And then maybe they're like, oh, I want to learn what to do when I'm feeling really angry. And we're like, okay, great. And we already know that self-control strategies are going to be
Right.
covered, but that's so cool that they can kind of pick and choose.
Well, I'll send you to the link. I mean, it's a general one. It's not specifically focused like if that was your group, but I have a general one for the topics that I can send you so your listeners get like a free link to it and it's printable and digital depending on like your choice of, I like to mix and match. I like some paper based still.
Yeah, no, that
So,
sounds great. Yeah, send me the link and we'll include it in the show notes. Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.
sure.
Now, what's one thing? Oh, I actually wanted to ask, you said you have a list of questions that you ask administrators. Can you tell us just one or two of those?
Sure. I mean, a huge thing, and I think I don't remember which one I talked about it, but a huge thing is like knowing your space, right? So as counselors, I've had closets before or hallways, which is really against HIPAA, but like or cafeterias, but knowing your space is huge. So like if you one of my worst was an old locker room that was no longer used and they literally just put a red carpet on the floor and was like here's your space. There was
Ew.
not even like desks, chairs, nothing. So like knowing your space. So if you have a small space, like huge interactive activities you're not really going to be able to do as easily. So you're going to have to be aware of like, all right, I have a smaller space, so we can only really do like, smaller group things and be able to switch around as much. So knowing your space, another one that I think is really important to know, like how many students are going to be involved, right? So if you have, I've had groups of anywhere, when you do 3-to-1, when you're doing IEPs, or if you're doing a group that's like, I've had 30 for the advisory class, which is definitely way too many, but to know, okay, every activity I'm going to have to break into smaller groups because there's too many students to do like a whole class activity versus if you get 12 or, so knowing those things like your mixed grade levels, your the different like are we going to have different ages, are we going to have different abilities, like knowing all those things kind of helps you prep and set up too, like do I need some extra interventions, what do the students look like, so those type of things. I hope that's helpful.
No, definitely. Yeah. So understanding your environment and your audience to like best like form the lesson. That way you're prepared. I love the example of like, sometimes I know in my head, at least I'm like, well, this is what I planned. So this is what we're going to do. But then it's like, that doesn't always work because if you, had a certain class lesson activity But then the class is huge. Yeah, like you said, breakout groups are going to be more appropriate than like a whole class activity. That's great. So tell us, what's one thing that you wish parents and educators knew? You can take this in any direction, in general or specific to leading advisory.
So I'm gonna go with this one because it doesn't apply that I've ever encountered here, but from what I hear from other counselors, that there always needs to be an explanation around SEL,
Mhm.
what that's about, because I know some parts of the United States are a little hesitant to put in programs like that. So for parents to know that it's really a program that's just teaching, students social skills and communication skills so they're able to, better interact with others and to learn how to work with groups and other people. And I think that's huge, especially when, I guess working with middle school and high school students, I always have that like, right, what happens when they get a job? How they're behaving in school isn't going to translate for them. So having them think about like, all right, how do we interact with other people that are outside of school? And so for me, like them really understanding like how to communicate and how to put your best foot forward and all these things, I think are such helpful skills because they're not innate, right? Like they have to learn these skills. So I think that's something definitely for parents, like that I think is huge.
Yes, I love that. That's so good. And yeah, it's way better to do it, the communicating before, So like, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. Takes that, there's always fear in the unknown. So people may have heard one thing about what SEL is not, and they're scared of it. But just explaining ahead of time instead of like doing the lesson and then they're like, why did my kid get this instruction? I want to opt out or whatever. So I like that idea. And as we're doing, coming into back to school, maybe that's something counselors could do, like add a back to school night or add an open house, being there to share information and answer any questions parents might have.
I would also recommend, depending on where you're from, if that's the back to school night that you're having with some places that are struggling with the SEL, I would definitely have your admin there to back you up. That's really about making sure it goes in because you don't want to feel like all of a sudden you become this target of some kind of political thing that like is completely out of your hands. So making sure like that there's some of that, but also too like having the materials and the handouts like for some like written information could be helpful at those nights for sure.
Definitely. What advice would you give to school counselors for the upcoming school year?
Definitely prep and plan, but also I think sometimes like we need our own mottos and positive self-talk. Like, you know what, you're doing a good job. You're doing the best you can. And like remembering like don't take everything home and like work on it till midnight because I know it's hard because you want to be on top of things, but you have to do some self-care because the work we do is really hard and
Mhm.
like it's mentally exhausting. So you want to make sure that like you're able to help the students when you have the energy, with enough energy and not like I guess I get to tell people like if your battery's dead, there's nothing that you can do to communicate with people. So it's kind of the same like with your cell phone with you. Like if you've like exhausted all your energy on all the things that we're expected to do, you're not going to be able to show up one-on-one for the students because you're going to be exhausted.
Right. No, that's sound advice for sure. Speaking of, let's get into our fun rapid fire questions. And our first one is, what do you do for self-care?
Again, probably sounds a little strange. Well, I go for walks is definitely one. And the other thing I do is I focus on creating resources for educators. I know it doesn't seem
Yeah,
like self-care, but it makes me really happy.
yeah, it's a creative outlet for sure. I love that. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and we'll link to all your stuff in the show notes so you guys can check out what Leslie has. What about, okay, well, a side question on that. If you are going on a walk, do you listen to anything or are you like walking in silence?
So I used to listen to Rachel Davis's podcast for TPT. That was like my go-to. Um, Now if I remember, because if I get a walk in by myself, I just kind of run out the door. So,
Mhm.
um, but I haven't really like I know there's some really great ones. Oh, Jasmine Star. I absolutely love her. That she's for business. I don't know if you've ever listened to her.
No, I have. Yeah,
She's
yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, I absolutely love her, and I feel like she's really motivating, and like the best thing is, that I feel like I take from her all the time is her talking about her consistency, like showing up. We always feel like we want to do more, and we can't always do more. Like there isn't enough time in the day. So just feeling like, you know what, I showed up and did what I can do for today, but I'm consistent. I'm showing up every day, and I feel like that for me really helps like keep me going.
I love that. Yeah, good recommendation. Now, what about small group versus one-on-one versus class lesson? What do you prefer?
Class lessons for sure.
We
That's
knew
my
that.
thing.
I know, we knew a trick question. And same, this is another easy question. Little kids or big kids? Who do you like to work with?
Big kids. I like
Like
my
high
own little
school.
kid, but it was so interesting. Like I've definitely gone to interviews for like elementary school, and I'm like, this is such a different vibe.
Mhm.
It was like very flowery, and people were so happy, and I'm like, it just felt like being like in a completely other place, you
Yeah,
know?
shut up. That's so funny. Okay. Would you rather have to deal with an angry parent or an angry coworker?
I think an angry parent.
Yeah.
Because I think a parent, like, you can meet their needs and do what they need to do. And an angry coworker then like is a environment that you're like around a lot,
Mhm.
So if like it's not working out, they don't just go home.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. And then this one I kind of already asked about your walks, but when you're commuting to work, do you like to drive in silence, listen to music, or listen to podcasts?
So I don't drive. I take the subway.
Oh, okay. Well,
So right.
duh.
So I walk in silence to the subway. And then
Okay.
on the subway, I actually like edit Google Docs. So I use that as like my work time because nobody's asking me a million questions. So
Right.
it's like my 15 to 20 minutes of silence.
That's so awesome. No, that's great that you find that you can be productive during that time because I'm someone, I feel like at home, I'm like super productive. Like I'm always like, even if I only have a few minutes, like whipping out my laptop to work on something. But on airplanes, my husband can work. He'll work the whole flight. I like cannot work on an airplane. I don't know. I've tried, but I'm usually with my kids too. So that plays into it. But even if it's like everyone's asleep, I'm like, I'm just going to watch a movie. I don't know. I cannot work on airplanes. So I'm impressed you can work on the subway.
No, I cannot like the airplanes is a new thing. I started getting like motion sickness.
Mhm.
So I've been like on the last flight I took some ibuprofen to some to
Yeah.
or like prescribed Dramamine, if you will. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, can I work on something? And it was like 5 minutes and I'm like, no, this isn't happening. So airplanes not so much. But
You know,
like
like,
trains,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, but like for the subway, like it's just easier. I feel like if I was driving, I'd probably listen to people's podcasts, to be honest with you. Like, at least something.
Yeah. With the no, and on the airplane, I feel like the Wi-Fi like is always so spotty. So it's like just frustrating. You know what I mean? Especially if you're trying to do like Canva or something with images. Anyways.
Yeah, but I'm super impressed that he's working on the airplane. You must have the kids sitting next to you then.
I do. I do. I'm on like mom duty and he's on work duty. Yeah, but it's a good balance. Awesome. Awesome. Well, it was so fun talking to you as always, Leslie. Share with the listeners where they can find you if they want to follow up and connect with you.
I'm on Instagram, Leslie.informed decisions. And I'll send you all the link information. I have a Facebook group for a free Facebook group for advisory, and SEL, as well. So for any information, and I love people that love to interact and ask comments, questions.
Yeah.
And I guess I have a TPT and a boom store. So from
Awesome.
learning if they need resources. But I hopefully this was helpful for someone and they can, use some of the things when they're starting off the school year. And I know people aren't ready to start thinking about that. We think about it all year round. I know other people
When do you
don't.
guys go back in New York?
We don't start again until September, so after Labor Day,
That's what I
right?
thought.
Labor Day.
Yeah, I know that it varies wildly all over the country, but I did a training series last week and I was asking people like, oh, when do you guys go back? And everyone was saying like early August, or like a lot of people were in
Yeah.
July, like teachers were back. Yeah, so
Yeah.
crazy.
I've seen some people posting like they're already putting up their bulletin boards. I'm like, but they end up starting like we're still in school till June. So
Right,
they're already out.
right.
Yeah, I guess it depends like on the wet, like if the hotter places. I mean, I have no idea how it really works.
Yeah.
That's just my guess.
Well, growing up in Georgia, we would always go back early, like we get out in May and then go back in August.
Yeah.
And, but we always wanted to like back to school shopping, and I would buy like boots and jeans. And then my mom's like, no, like you still have to wear shorts for like another month because it's so hot. But I wanted to wear like many back to school clothes, but it was never appropriate until like September, October.
Yeah.
So funny. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Leslie. We look forward to connecting with you, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure being on here. I had so much fun.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.